My name is Faith Gay, and I'm one of the owners of this gorgeous project. My wife and I have lived in Richfield Springs for more than a decade, and when we moved here, we were overwhelmed by the amazing beauty of the place, and we were overwhelmed by the community we experienced in this village. We were hoping as we got older that younger folks would move in and enjoy this great community, the cultural events, the churches, the opportunity to raise families, the chance for multi-generational closeness in the community. We discovered that there were many, many jobs in the area that young people were interested in, but they had no real opportunity for housing. They're either stuck buying huge houses that were too expensive, too hard to get mortgages, took too much time to repair, maybe more space than they needed, and there wasn't apartment style or loft style housing around here. So those jobs were going unfilled. Employers were frustrated. People who wanted a chance to live here, they were blocked by one thing, which was housing that would work for them. We saw this building on Main Street that was fantastic and gorgeous and head-turning, but vacant. And we drove by it, and we drove by it for years and years, and finally we had a chance to purchase it. And we thought if there's this beautiful vacant building on Main Street in Richfield Springs, if that could be transformed into something that was both a place to live and a place to gather, it could be truly transformative.
Right before COVID, I had my eye on this building in Cooperstown, New York. It's an old brick building and has become a bat factory. And I understood that there was a gentleman who was a builder and a contractor, Josh Edmonds, who eventually became my partner, who was also interested in that building. And when we met, I was completely taken not only for his passion for the community, but also the fact that he was a builder of passive homes, of homes that leave a small carbon footprint, of homes that really address the energy crisis in this country. And I was completely naive about this. And so I began to read about it and to learn about it and realized that this was the kind of person I wanted to go into business with. And so with him and his company, Simple Integrity, we completed an important building in Cooperstown, New York, and then turned our attentions to here. And now this obviously is a much more complex project, something that requires, restoration rather than from the ground up. And so one of the first agencies we went to was NYSERDA, with the help not only of Simple Integrity, but also our architects, River Architects. We all worked together to create a proposal that's generated for us a wonderful grant, but it was really a proposal about putting forth these principles, putting these principles into action in this space that hopefully will become a major renovation point for this community.
It was originally built as the first national bank of Richfield Springs.
They actually used to print money here as well for a long time until the federal government took that back over from local state banks. Obviously, we get this great big hardy vault behind us, which now becomes a really special moment in history that we can preserve and maintain for the community, and gets to be a display and really point of interest for the future life of this building. There's a lot of elements here that, one, as a bank, had some really beautiful finishes. These mosaic tile floors that were here in the main bank space are all being kept in place, and then we'll be ghosting in wood flooring up next to it. So you can see the history where the old outline, the old layout was.
The first floor had all marble baseboard, and so we have all that stacked in containers, and so that'll be going back in. The upper floors were pretty much gutted when we took over the building, and so we don't have a lot left up there, but we do have a series of doors with transoms. We actually ended up with 9, and we have 9 apartments, and so each apartment, we can't use them as the actual entry door to the apartment just due to fire code, but inside the apartment, as you enter into the living space, there's one of these historic doors and transoms. We have a fair amount of historic trim, and so we'll be using that and then replicating what's missing.
One of the other significant pieces that we had on the interior was a beautifully detailed stair from the second to third floor. And so we've been able to pull that out intact and maintain it. And we're going to be putting that actually up on the 3rd floor and using it as a staircase to a loft in one of the units up there. So that'll be, a special, really unique feature of one of the units in place.
And part of the adaptive reuse when you're looking at existing buildings is we do have current building code that we have to deal with. On some of these projects, it feels like you're pulled in all these different directions between, we look at passive house and what's important there. We look at the historic, what's important there. And we look at building codes and what's important there for safety. And each group is always, primarily focused on their pieces that are important to them. And then we're in the middle and we're kind of, mixing and shifting and kind of working with everybody to try and put all the pieces together. And that's part of the reason why that historic stair, we couldn't really leave it because it wouldn't meet commercial stair code as a safe access for the building. But if we put it inside a residential unit, all of a sudden we're back under residential code inside the individual units. And so then we can it's that creative reuse as we're trying to capture sort of the history and the feeling of the building, while at the same time, the reality is we have building codes that we have to meet.
Reusing as much material as we can salvage from the space besides the historical benefit, of course, means we're not buying and creating more, finished material to bring into the building now. So, all that energy is saved, all that's here. That goes into not just the interior finishes, but obviously the main goal of preserving this building. It had been sitting in such disrepair for so long. Somebody could have easily just come and knocked it down, but we saw a little gem here that we figured we could do something with and save.
And often financially, it's cheaper to knock it down. But you look at how many dumpsters we saved, not having to, not dumpstering the entire building. I mean, there's an enormous amount that would have gone to a landfill if this building had been demolished.
That all just, reemphasizes the point that the NYSERDA funding is really critical for us because, as Josh mentioned, the easier thing to do could have been just to come in and knock it down, do something new, and then you maximize your, lot and density capacity. Here we get in the apartments that we can fit in, but we save something really important. We reduce the total energy put in, and we do something good for the community. With any FIAS project that we approach, the whole idea is behind their basic principles, right? Is that you rely on all your passive methods first. So high R values, more insulation than you typically might have in a conventional building. And so on the walls, we from our existing structure, it was essentially a heavy timber frame with a full brick veneer on the outside. And wanting to preserve that exterior facade, we needed to obviously insulate to the interior. So we packed out the existing wall cavity and then built out 2 more layers of insulation to the interior with our air barrier layer, in between that first and second stud layer. So that's protected and never gets sacrificed, and we can maintain our air tightness to the building.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we go with mineral wool, especially actually in this building as a retrofit too, is our concern for just moisture migration, because, conventionally maybe with a new building, we might strategize our building envelope and really bias all of the continuous insulation to the exterior of our air barrier, right? Which is really critical in our climate region. One thing that's really specific to the FIAS calculator and how they define the heating and cooling load thresholds that we need to hit for our energy model are based off of your region, because we've got such a different, climate range between the whole country, right? So, whether you're in the really hot, arid Southwest is going to call for a very different assembly strategy versus where we are here in the kind of humid Northeast and cool climate. Our existing sheathing on this building is very open. It's not, like a plywood-based sheathing that gets to be taped and totally clean, and you can apply your exterior membrane to that. In this case, our brick is our exterior WRB, or our weatherproofing membrane. So, and we don't have access to the exterior of that sheeting. So we had to be careful about that. And mineral wool was a very conscious choice for that insulation, because if we do have any moisture migration or vapor drive pushing into those walls, we've got an insulation that is resistant to any mold or mildew buildup. And can dry out very easily as well. And to help handle the existing brick condition on the exterior too, we're applying like a siloxane type sealer to increase the capillary resistance of the brick. So, it can help reduce the amount of moisture driven through the brick.
The other reason we build them so tight is that way we can control where all that air is coming in and going out. We'd rather decide how much, and we'd rather filter it. And also, when you look at energy, when we blower door test existing buildings and we're, at 7 air changes per hour, that is a lot of cubic volume.
That's a ton.
That is changing, that you have to reheat.
Yeah.
Not to mention whatever pollutants it's bringing in with it. We spend some time in attics and crawl spaces, and you do not want your air coming through those spaces because they can be pretty nasty. Our strategy is typically we're supplying fresh air 24/7 to bedrooms and like living spaces, and we're exhausting stale air from kitchens, bathrooms, laundry rooms, anywhere where generally those indoor odors are being created and whatnot. And using an ERV or an HRV, we're also able to, in the winter up here, if we're exhausting a ton of air that we've spent a lot of money to heat up,
Yep.
we want to capture that energy before we send it out of the building. And so it's like a mix between a car radiator, type of concept where we're using that exhaust air to warm up the incoming air. We're not mixing air streams, but we are transferring the energy. And it is remarkable how much energy you can transfer between those two streams.
And once we create a nice airtight envelope and we're controlling the airflow in and out of the building and then recovering all the energy that we've already put in, well, we don't need the large mechanical systems anymore. So that's why we're able to use, the really small air-to-air heat pumps. And they're tiny, 6,000 BTU units, half-ton units for each unit. That's it, one single air source heat pump for each unit. So it's an incredibly small amount of energy being put into heating and cooling the space. So instead of just coming in and doing a quick renovation that maybe adds 10 years to the life of this building, we're coming in and really, with the Passive House standard, making it a resilient building and hopefully extending its lifespan for another 100 years, with a robust envelope, uses little energy and can really, bring us forward.
On that aspect, one of the neat things with Passive House is the fact that this is an all-electric building, and it's amazing how many houses, usually in the winter in our area, burn down. Usually it's from some type of heating source. Occasionally it's electrical, but usually it's primarily wood stoves or some other combustion form in the house. And what's cool about Passive House, we've always been a combustion-free building sort of mindset. And so this building has no combustion in it. So we're all electric. We've got a lot of rock wool insulation, which does not burn, but it's kind of the best case scenario is if you don't have anything that's going to start that fire. No combustion in the building. That way our heating is air source heat pumps. Our cooking is electric or induction. Our hot water is electric via heat pumps. Dryers are heat pump dryers. And so you've kind of taken all those different things where you're burning something inside of a building, and we've gotten rid of those, which is a huge reduction in fire risk.
One of the learning experience about working with historic preservation is that the way we think restoring a building like this is appropriate is different from what the National Park Service or SHPO is looking for. SHPO is looking to preserve certain period in time, and there are limitations on how much insulation that we can use in the building. They would prefer that we used only 3.5-inch thick insulation, for example, because that's what is typical in an interior, wood stud cavity. They did not want to see triple glazed windows, while we argued that that's not noticeable from the street or, in a daily use. What was really interesting about this building is that it's not your typical 3-wide thick brick building. Our consultant who's helping us with the SHPO application calls it a barn with brick veneer, because somehow they figured out, they have a timber structure like this, and they use just a single white brick veneer to achieve that majestic look. The interesting aspect about energy modeling an existing building is that you're kind of stuck with the elements, such as a lot of Western windows, or a lot of windows in general. When we were actually thinking about considering double glazed window to satisfy the SHPO requirement, we had a huddle, among ourselves, and Josh Edmond, who was the builder, said, well, that meets a SHPO requirement, but what about durability? A project like this is a showcase, for this both state and the developer, showing that revitalizing a beautiful building like this maintains that historic pride, yet progressing into the future with it. Grants from the state has been monumental for our client to be able to pursue this. We are definitely having a lot of fun working with NYSERDA because they're giving us the opportunity to really share the message of why restoring buildings like this to Passive House standard is important. We are usually too busy trying to get the projects out, but having NYSERDA support behind us enables us to communicate with the public why this is important. We won 2 awards. One is the Buildings of Excellence, which was early design support and energy modeling and educating the public. So that was Buildings of Excellence, early design support. And then CNED, Carbon Neutral Economic Community Development Grant, we focused that towards the construction. So I think both grants combined, I think was close to $1 million.
Especially in terms of NYSERDA's goals with disadvantaged communities and how they're trying to distribute funding and utilize existing infrastructure and building stock that are throughout the state. This building became a really good opportunity to exploit that and take advantage of that funding and also meet the state mandated goals for energy efficiency moving forward and into the future.
What NYSERDA's funding allows us to do is frankly even just do this project. If we're going to do the project, we're going to do it to Passive House standard. That's just the team we have. But that makes it really possible because we can't necessarily charge the rents that would pay for this building just because with the community here, the rents aren't that high. And so NYSERDA's funding allows us to do the building that we all want to do and that the community really will benefit from without having the rents necessarily to fully support that. This building is on Main Street here in Richfield, kind of at the center of town. And so it would be fantastic to see this building come back to life. A lot of people remember banking here and things like that, and having pizza here when it was a pizza place after it was a bank. And so to kind of be the starting point for the community to sort of like see this type of investment in the area here is kind of like a big way to encourage other people to start. It's okay to fix up your place and sort of start to bring things back into downtown Richfield.
One of the things that we are hoping for this project is that it will be something that can be replicated in other small towns. There's so much beautiful, half-deserted architecture along roadways in this country. And often they're on Main Street, just like here. There have been periods during the country's history where small towns and main streets were super important to community, and they've faded a bit. We fervently believe that the only way you can live a meaningful life is through community. And so to that extent, main streets and towns need to be busy, they need to be bustling. There need to be spaces like this where people can interact with each other. There need to be spaces like this that are beautiful, in which people of various generations can live in. And so we're hoping that if this project is successful, we can share the work we've done, the plans we've made, the decisions we've made with other towns like Richfield Springs, and that this can be a beacon and an encouragement for other towns to build on their main streets and use existing structures to make the city or the town or the village more beautiful, more accessible, and more community building in every way you use that term.
And so NYSERDA have been wonderful partners. They have engaged with us. They have helped us consider different options, different ways of doing things. And that is going to be the way of the future. We, in the next coming decades, as the governor has urged us to do, have to really focus on how we can create important new housing that really reduces our carbon footprint. We are blessed to be in New York State, a state that is one of the, the cornerstones of our country, but also a state that has amazing natural resources. We still have water, we still have land, we still have an amazing mix of different cultures and populations here. And currently, in this situation, I believe that doing projects like this are one of the things that are going to economically revitalize places like this in central New York.